Why don't we start with some of this here Arctic news? And this is from Gizmodo. Brian Kahn, who I read the other day, who did a good article about the Arctic the other day, but had kind of a no-brainer tweet as well the following day. We've got to rebuild our infrastructure, and that'll fix climate change. Anyways, this is Brian Kahn. It hit 80 degrees in the Arctic this week. That should frighten anybody who has any kind of sense whatsoever. Because A, it doesn't get 80 degrees in the Arctic. There's no 80 degrees in the Arctic in a normal climate. Period. There's no 80 degrees in the Arctic. There just isn't. Even in the dead of summer, that would be highly, 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 highly abnormal. But we're getting, extreme high temperatures in the Arctic all the time. Even in winter, we get, above freezing temperatures, which is very high. But 80 degrees in the Arctic should be, a big, huge red flag. Again, to anybody who has any kind of sense. This story will provide important context for the headline, and I encourage you to read it, but really the headline tells you what you need to know. It was 80 degrees Fahrenheit above the Arctic Circle this week. A little farther south in Siberia, the region of the world we reference when we want to connote something cold, it was 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Again, that is not normal. That is not normal. That is not normal. That is not normal. And not only is it not normal, it's happening frequently in the brave new world of climate change. Arctic sea ice in the neighboring Kara Sea took the deepest May nosedive ever recorded. Oh, and random swaths of the region are on fire. Things are extremely wrong. Let's start with the heat above the Arctic Circle. Mika Rantanen, a researcher at the Finnish Meteorological Institute, flagged a map showing blistering heat across western Siberia. The region has been the epicenter of an explosive heat wave that has rippled across the Arctic this week. Models forecast temperatures there will be as much as 36 degrees Fahrenheit above normal for this time of year. 36 degrees Fahrenheit above normal. Well, and the qualifier above normal for this time of year, I mean, let's just go back 10 years, 10 or 20 years. I would say that, that's above normal for any time of the year. Above normal for any time of the year. The heat could break a bit by the middle of next week, but widespread warmth will continue to grip the region. On land, it means wildfires continue to spread. Pierre Marcus, a satellite monitoring expert, has kept an eye on the series of increasingly odd fires above the Arctic Circle, a place known more for ice than fire. Most of the blazes he's documented are in the eastern portion of Siberia, which also dealt with its fair share of heat all year in addition to low snowpack. Seeing fires burn next to braided rivers and large patches of unmelted snow is truly a mood for our current era of climate destabilization. Then there are ocean impacts because climate change doesn't just stop at the water's edge. Warmth has washed over the seas that border Siberia, and the Kara Sea north of the western part of the region has seen the most precipitous decline in sea ice after a slow decline in the first part of May. Warm air has fueled a stark decline in sea ice. As of earlier this week, ice extent was the lowest level that's ever been recorded in May. I'm going to read that again. As of earlier this week, ice extent was the lowest level that's ever been recorded in May. And I'm going to show you, well, you can probably already see by this graph. I'll show you a little larger. We are in unprecedented territory, and it's not even an El Nino year. And while they're not at record-setting levels like the Kara Sea, the Bering and Barents Seas are both at some of their lowest levels on record for this time of year. So let's look at this a little larger. So, yeah, the Kara sea ice, this is the lowest. This is 2012, which was the record lowest ice extent on record. Here, that it didn't really start its decline until June. Right at the end of May, and then it just fell off the table. But I mean, we're already way ahead of 2012 as far as rate of loss or decline. These impacts are the latest in a litany of climate horrors for the Arctic as a whole. Last summer, it reached nearly 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Above the Arctic Circle in Sweden. Did I read that right? Did we read that last week? Last summer. 95 degrees Fahrenheit above the Arctic Circle in Sweden. Again, unprecedented. Not normal, not usual at all on any level. In any year, on any day, that is not usual. That is nothing that you could shrug your shoulders at and go, yeah, it happens. No, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And it doesn't happen, winter after winter or summer after summer in consecutive years. Those are not anomalies. The same summer, the mercury hit 70 degrees Fahrenheit. At the northernmost settlement on the planet, Greenland also melted and burned. That's just some of what happened last year. I could list the same for 2018 and 2017, and you get the point. I have to be honest, I'm getting sick of writing these stories. The Arctic is warming twice as fast as the rest of the globe. What's happening there is unprecedented. But how many ways can you talk about the fact that the Arctic is just extremely, massively fucked by climate change when the impacts are relentless? After a while, the degrees above normal start to feel normal. And the records are ephemeral, set to be broken again next year, but here we are with just another absolutely outlandish occurrence. I'll keep writing about them because even if the records start to blend together, then in itself is a sign we really need to get our poop together and cut emissions now. Poop is my own word. Yeah, so again, unprecedented, unusual, highly abnormal, high temperatures, sea ice loss. I mean, the evidence is overwhelming that something is wrong. The evidence is overwhelming that something is wrong and that we are warming, that we are not cooling, that we are not going into a solar minimum. I mean, we are going into solar minimum, but climate change is vastly outpacing any effects the solar minimum might have. So we're not going into a solar minimum. That's been canceled. Solar minimum canceled. Just like all your summer plans, canceled. Poppy Davis, 80 in the Arctic. I'm speechless. I don't know what to say about it other than, holy shnikes. This is best I can come up with. There is no doubt now. The heat is on, etc. Yes. Right, boiled rope lamppost, 1,200-year flood. There's just, all of these occurrences, the wildfires and the high temperatures and the sea ice loss and the floods and the, hurricanes and the cyclones. It's the new normal. These are not anomalies anymore. This is normal weather now. This is just going to continue. Oh, thanks, Gene. Wait. McPherson is doing stock market updates as well? Okay. Well, I mean, it's news. McPherson is doing 1 minute 30-second Apple News roundups. I think his software is glitching. I mean, I don't know. He's just reading headlines. Okay. Yeah, I saw that he was on Jamal Thomas's show yesterday, but I didn't get to listen to it, or I didn't listen to his segment. So maybe there's a repo. Maybe I'll go back and listen to it. But he's done interviews with Jamal Thomas. He did one with him a long time ago, and I think he's just been coming on his show recently. But I mean, whatever. I mean, like it gets look. If you're just talking about climate change all the time, or the near-term human extinction all the time, I think even that gets a little bit repetitive and like. Yes, we all know that it's happening, of course, and we can say it over and over and over again, just like the Brian Kahn says in that article. But sometimes you want to talk about it. There are other things happening in the world, and they're all everything is a compound. Everything is creating a compound problem. So, I mean, I don't see what the problem is with McPherson reading headlines or at least dissecting what the news means in his mind. I don't see any problem with it. I kind of do the same thing on this channel, right? We cover a lot of things. It's not all climate change, and I apologize to the people that just want me to cover doom and gloom all the time, climate change and doom, but Jesus, we all know that it's happening, and like there are other things to talk about as well. Human beings are capable of covering many subjects and carrying lots of ideas around in their minds, and correlating all of these things together. That's called holistic. A holistic view of the world or life, right? That's what it means to have a holistic view of life. It's to take in all of the factors and create like a big picture out of it. And not just like laser focus on one thing. If you're laser focused on one thing, I'm telling you, you're missing a lot of other things that are probably as important as what it is you're focusing on. Did guys say Jamar wasn't black? I think, yeah. I don't think he said that. I think you're mixing him up with Sleepy Biden. Sorry to use Trump's term, but man, is he sleepy. He's slow as hell. Exactly, Gene. Let people do their people talk about whatever they talk about. Like lots of people cover lots of different things. I know that, Hambone covers all kinds of stuff. He reads headlines. That's his channel. He reads a bunch of headlines. They all lead to the same conclusion, but, he goes out and goes through the daily news quite often. So, I don't really understand what the problem is. Anyways. I'm getting off on a tangent here. Biden time, indeed. Well, okay, let's move on to this article out of The Guardian. COVID-19 crisis will wipe out demand for fossil fuels, says IEA. Well, that's good news, says, what is it? Isn't this the regulated body that overlooks they overlook like nuclear power, don't they? On some level. The International Energy Agency. They're showing, this big coal-fired power plant near Germany. Anyways, renewable electricity may be the only source to withstand biggest shock in 70 years. Okay. Well, it's great if it wipes out the demand for fossil fuel, but we want the demand for energy overall to go down. So that would be optimal. Renewable electricity will be the only source resilient to the biggest global energy shock in 70 years triggered by the coronavirus pandemic, according to the world's energy watchdog. The International Energy Agency said the outbreak of COVID-19 would wipe out demand for fossil fuels by prompting a collapse in energy demand 7 times greater than the slump caused by the global financial crisis. In a report, the IEA said the most severe plunge in energy demand since the Second World War would trigger multi-decade lows for the world's consumption of oil, gas, and coal while renewable energy continued to grow. Well, on some levels, that's good. The steady rise of renewable energy combined with the collapse in demand for fossil fuel means clean electricity will play its largest ever role in the global energy system this year and help erase a decade's growth of global carbon emissions. We'll see if that actually happens. Fatih Birol, the IEA's executive director, said the plunge in demand for nearly all major fuels is staggering, especially for coal, oil, and gas. Again, great news. Only renewables are holding up during this previously unheard of slump in electricity use. Renewable energy is expected to grow by 5% this year. That's good. 5% is good. It's not whopping. It needs to grow by 5% every single year, and maybe even bigger than that. But that's debatable whether that's actually desirable or not. To make up almost 30% of the world's shrinking demand for electricity. Well, we got to replace it with something. We can't just talk about using less electricity. Again, the bias, the industrial civilization bias is large in this article. I don't know how much farther I'm going to read in this, but the growth of renewables despite a global crisis could spur fossil fuel companies towards their goals to generate more clean energy, according to Burrell. But government should also include clean energy at the heart of economic stimulus packages to ensure a green recovery. How about ensure a green degrowth of your GDP? How about ensure green degrowth? Recovery sounds like economic recovery is the only thing that we could ever wish for and desire. This is actually a bit of sly propaganda here, because they're telling you, we need industrial civilization to pick back up again, and more growth and more things and more people and more stuff. We need all those things to happen, but we need it to be fueled by a different energy source, which is false. We're going to just imagine me stamping this article with false. It is still too early to determine the longer-term impacts, but the energy industry that emerges from this crisis will be significantly different from the one that came before. The impact of coronavirus has triggered a crisis for fossil fuel commodities, including the collapse of oil market prices, which turned negative for the first time in the U.S. earlier this month. Awesome. Global efforts to curb the spread of COVID-19 have led to severe restrictions on travel and the global economy that will cause the biggest drop in global oil demand in 25 years. How about, let's change the sentence. Let's fix this sentence. Global efforts to curb the impacts of climate change have led to severe restrictions on travel and the global economy. Could we make that sentence read, global efforts to curb the deadly impacts of climate change have led to severe restrictions on travel and global economy? Could we ever read that? Would that sentence ever be written in an article in The Guardian or CNN or anywhere else? Would we ever see that? Demand for gas is expected to fall by 5%, not nearly enough, in my opinion. After a decade of uninterrupted growth, it is the steepest drop since gas became widely used as an energy source in the second half of the previous century. Coal demand is forecast to fall by 8% compared with 2019. Its largest decline since the end of the Second World War, but that doesn't really mean anything, because last week we covered the fact that coal-burning power plants have doubled. Coal as a source of energy has doubled in the past 10 years. So 8% is not a whole lot. It would have to fall by 50% in order to get back to where we were 10 years ago. The Paris-based Energy Authority used data from every country and across each energy sector to analyze the impact of the pandemic on the global system. Found that global energy demand was likely to plummet by 6% this year, the equivalent of losing the entire energy demand of India, the world's third largest energy consumer, or the combined energy demand of France, Germany, Italy, and UK. The impact of the pandemic on energy use will be more keenly felt in advanced economies where demand is expected to fall by 11%. That's beautiful, across the EU, and 9% across the US. Excellent. Collapse of fossil fuel demand could lead global emissions to fall by 8%. Compared with 2019, a drop 6 times larger than the record fall after the financial crisis in 2009 to lows not seen in the past decade. But they're missing so much in this article. They're missing the whole thing. If we were to take dramatic action against climate change, the one that everybody has been calling for, that governments have agreed to, that we need to zero out emissions or something like that by 2030, let's say, or even 2035. Emissions would have to fall by this much, like year after year after year over the next 10 years. The 3 billion ton drop in carbon dioxide emissions, which would be great. So, if we were to actually tackle climate change in a substantial way, we would have to do this every single year. We'd have to quarantine people and limit their travel and restrict their movements and restrict their consumption. Just like this, every year for the next 10 years. You guys ready? I am. I'm down. Are you guys down? 39 likes. Thank you, Prudhomme. Could you please liken up the videos, please? I only see 25 viewers and 11 likes. They froze it at the beginning of my broadcast again for the 4th day in a row. New fun times with YouTube. Anthony Davis, thank you, man. I appreciate you. Anthony says 1,000 loves and 1 million watching. Poppy Davis, you have a frozen count too? Yeah. Cool. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Russ Taylor, this article is BS. It won't bounce back. Come on, it's not a permanent. No, it won't. It's not a permanent drop. Not at all. Not at all. Donald McCarthy, love the poetry. The whole stadium cheers the lone matador. Degrowth has to compete against that. Change your mind at all. Yeah, I mean, we are literally, what we're doing right now is, literal degrowth. We're doing some form of degrowth right now. We are in the middle of fighting climate change while we're fighting this pandemic at the same time. If people were more aware of that, then they would go, well, Judy Truitt, 90 watching, 52 likes. Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, they're just, YouTube has gone full censorship, or full fuckery, full algorithmic fuckery. Anyways, let's move on to the last thing I wanted to cover. Oh, hold on one second. I need to save this article. That looked just so interesting. This is another article out of The Guardian. Humanity must take this chance to find a new normal and safeguard our planet. Well, yeah, for sure. I think that's what we're talking about right now. Climate risks and opportunities need to be incorporated into the financial system as well as public policy making and infrastructure. Let me rewrite that for you, sir, or ma'am. Who wrote this? Who wrote this? A whole bunch of people wrote this. Elizabeth, Ibrahim, and Patricia. Climate risks. Let's leave out the opportunities. Climate risks need to be incorporated into a planet-wide awareness around climate change and the fact that the financial system is killing our planet, and so thus needs to be slowly taken apart, along with our infrastructure. How about that? Does that sound better? There's a lot of talk about getting back to normal after the COVID-19 crisis is over, and yet normal business as usual is what has made our planet and our societies vulnerable to crises in the first place. Normal means cutting down huge swaths of forest to plant crops. Normal means overgrazing livestock, destroying natural ecosystems at the expense of habitats for wild animals. Normal is driving climate change, which increases stress in wild species and their habitats and makes people more susceptible to zoonotic diseases, which spread from animals to humans. A sound future can be built on a social contract for nature, whatever that means, that will lead to a new normal that puts us in harmony with the environment. What does that mean? One that minimizes the outbreak of zoonotic epidemics, revives a profitable economy. No, does not revive a profitable economy. That's the problem. God dang it. And ensures that ecosystem services are available for everyone. So the ecosystem is just providing a service and resources for everyone, right? No realization that we've turned the ecosystem into a commodity that humans can use at their whim, and as much of as they like, without any consequences. No awareness of that at all in this. Okay. Scientists estimate that at least 6 out of every 10 known infectious diseases in people have spread from animals. More importantly, 3 out of every 4 new or emerging infectious diseases affecting humans come from animals. Zoonosis has its roots in elements from our current model of development, particularly in agriculture and mining, and in the way we develop roads and plan urban growth. Vast changes in land use and the loss of habitat from these practices have put people and livestock into closer contact with wild species. They have exposed our societies to diseases for which no immunity has yet developed. More than 70% of the ice-free land surface has been altered significantly already. By 2050, it's a long time from now, land use change will affect 90% of the Earth's land systems if we continue with business as usual. Do you think we're actually going to get there? My question is, are we actually going to get to 9 billion people or 10 billion people? I don't even see that at all. Did we get to 2050? I don't see that at all. Do we get to 90% of the Earth's land systems being altered significantly? No, we don't get there. We don't make it there. If we carry on the same path, a future pandemic could be even more deadly and costly in terms of lives and livelihood. We can, however, create a new normal with the kind of transformative changes that will enable us to recraft our relationships with land, biodiversity, and the climate system. Some of those changes have already been highlighted in international agreements on climate, biodiversity, and land degradation. These include, among others, the 2015 Paris Agreement on Climate Change, the Strategic Plan for Biodiversity and the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, 2018-2030 Strategic Framework, and the 2030 Agenda, a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet, now and into the future. Achieving the targets in these agreements will help communities to both recover better from COVID-19 and build a clean, green, healthy, safe, and just future for all people. There's a lot of people that actually think that these things are woefully inadequate to address climate change as we know it, but we'll just put that aside. In his recent speech to celebrate the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres shared 6 climate-related actions to help nations green their recovery and invest in a more sustainable and resilient future. Well, thank you. Thank you, Antonio. The vision of protecting the long-term health of our natural world is vital. Nature provides, yes, it is. It's really vital, super vital. Nature provides ecosystem services that are essential for life. I really have a problem with that. I have a serious problem with ecosystem services being the way that we describe nature. That nature is just here to service us. And nature provides for us to a point. There's a limit. And we overstep that limit every single year, every single day. We overstep that limit. Food, water, pollination, the very air we breathe. We are in overshoot. So how are we going to deal with that? Ecosystem services are worth at least, God dang it, at least 125 trillion a year. And they even put a number, a monetary number on what the earth provides for us. This is disgusting. This is sick. It cannot be quantified. Dang it. This is about 1.5 times the gross domestic product of all countries. This is a sickness. This is actually a sickness to think that we can put a number on what nature provides for us, and put that into some kind of computer program or equation, and just figure out the right way to do what we need to do in this computer program with when we put in all the numbers and punch it all up, it's going to tell us the end is nigh. That's what it's going to tell us. If the computer has any sense at all, probably more sense than the humans inputting. Well, the ecosystem is worth $125 trillion. Awesome. So who owns the ecosystem? Who gets to divvy it up and divide it up and sell it off? I can't read any more of that because I reached a point of utter despair in that whole language that they were using to describe the planet and what it's worth to humans. And humans doing all their stuff. Hey guys, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. You can also support the channel at the links below. PayPal, Square, and Patreon. Also, all of my live streams are available for listening on Patreon if you happen to miss them during the day. So you can sign up for my Patreon for as little as $1. If you want to go check out the live streams, they are all there.